Hi everybody, it's Dr. O, and I wanted to share some self-care tips with you. My starting saying is be smart, eat smart. And it's true, the food that you put in your body is absolutely essential for self-care. So let's think about this a little bit more. What are the major categories of food? I asked myself this question. I actually came up with four kinds of major categories. You've probably heard of the three macronutrients, carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. Well, I'm going to add a fourth category that includes all the micronutrients, which are things like vitamins. And so in terms of carbs, the foods that have mostly carbs are cereals and grains, starches and fruit. In terms of foods that have mostly fat in them, fats are the same thing as oils, and so any junk food is high in fat. And in terms of what are the foods that have protein in them, well, of course, this is mostly animal products, meat, seafood, dairy, and eggs. And the best form of non-animal protein, it comes to us from beans. And then it turns out all three of these categories, carbs, fat, and proteins, they are relatively low in vitamins. But the food type that has the most vitamins, the most nutrition for us is vegetables. And so the next question I asked myself is, what foods are the most wholesome and the most nutritious? What do I really need to eat? And to me, the short answer is vegetables, fruits, and beans. So these are the foods I want to focus on to be sure that I'm taking care of myself and getting them in my diet. Now, focusing on vegetables just for a second, I asked myself, and this isn't based on any science, unfortunately, this is just based on information that's flowed to me through various means. But I asked myself, what are the most nutritious vegetables? And I came up with this list of 12. It's not the dirty dozen, it's the healthy dozen. Spinach, kale, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts, I think of those things all together as greens. And then, of course, there's broccoli and cauliflower, carrots, tomatoes, onions, bell peppers, zucchini, and squash. That's my list of the 12 most nutritious vegetables. Now, like I said, it's not based on science, and you can probably make an argument that there are other vegetables that should be on the list. But from my cultural upbringing and what's available to me, these are the vegetables that I consider most nutritious. So now the next question is, how do you prepare vegetables so that they are the most wholesome and nutritious that they could be? And you've probably heard that the more you cook a vegetable, the more you break down its nutrition. So raw vegetables are the most wholesome they could be. Lightly cooked vegetables, including those that are stir-fried or sautéed, still retain many of the nutrients. And once you get to cooked vegetables, you start losing some of them. I added in a fourth category here that's beyond cooked. It's what I call Southern style. I grew up in South Carolina, and it's very common in South Carolina for people to cook vegetables, to boil almost all the life out of them. And while they're doing that, they'll add butter or bacon fat or something like that to the vegetables, which even further compromises their nutritional quality. That's really just kind of a joke about Southern cooking. Okay, so how can I be sure that I get at least one great meal with the most wholesome foods every day? This is the question I asked myself, and I hope you'll ask yourself this question and move towards an answer. Here's my answer. It might not necessarily be the way you're going to do it, but I hope you'll consider it as food for thought. My goal is to eat a salad for lunch every day. And in this salad, I have at least 4 types of vegetables, some kind of greens, including kale, spinach, Brussels sprouts, or cabbage. I always chop up a whole carrot and put it in there. Lately, I've been buying grape tomatoes, and I put in 5 or 6 grape tomatoes, usually cut in half. I like to buy Roma tomatoes too. They're the ones that are about the size of an egg or a little bigger, and 1 Roma tomato goes into a salad. One thing I don't really like is buying bigger tomatoes and then you cut half of it so you have half one day and half the next day. It just doesn't work for me. And then I also chop up a bunch of broccoli and put it in there. Now when I have my salad, it's not just vegetables. I'll add a protein. Sometimes it might be things like eggs or a can of tuna, or if we have some salmon, leftover baked salmon from dinner. But the thing I do most often is I add a can of beans. Now, a lot of people don't necessarily like beans or consider beans to be that good, or you think you have to cook them. Honestly, beans taste great to me, and you don't have to cook them. I buy cans of beans. I drain the beans to get all the water off them. Sometimes I'll rinse them and then just mix them into my salad too. And honestly, it is a great lunch for me. I have a big bowl of greens and these other vegetables with a can of beans thrown in. Now you have to be careful with the dressing because the dressing is almost all fats and it's easy to add too much dressing. I always measure my dressing carefully, either using a measuring scoop or actually weighing it on the scale. And I try to keep it to what the recommendations on the bottle are for one serving size. Okay, so as we're going through this social isolation and as we're getting quarantined, it's important to take care of yourself. And one of the primary ways to take care of yourself is eating right. And when you're thinking about eating right, let's start with the best foods to eat, vegetables, and let's be sure every day you're getting a high quality meal that consists mostly of vegetables. All right, thanks.